So there's another bit of material customization we need to do. Remember all that business about the flattened attribute? So there it is again. If we visualize the flattened attribute as white to black, because again, this is essentially going to be used as an alpha later on, it'll be something like this. This is what we want. So we need to get this attribute out of the geometry and into the streets and also into our images. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to say back in our ocean surface here, anywhere you want, I'm just going to put it up here with the rest of our stuff. I'm going to say bind the flattened attribute. So again, it's flattened towards the end here. So the value will be 1, as we can see, at the end. You'll notice I went from 0 being white to 1 being black. So it's the opposite. So with our flattened attribute here, we want to do the same thing. Opposite, complement, 1 minus the value. So there you go. So I shouldn't say opposite, it's the complement. And then we do an export bind. And this basically, what are we exporting it to? Well, it kind of exports it up to the surface, if you will, for Mantra to find. So I'm going to say, let's call this we can call it the flattened attribute. Or we'll call it blend, because that'll be more obvious to a compositor, a hypothetical compositor. So this blend is now a variable, a vex variable that exists that can be accessed by Mantra. So if we come over here to the out area and we look at our ocean splash, we can do this thing called image planes, where we go to the images tab, come down to the extra image planes, because the main image plane is going to be like alpha and color, RGB. We can make arbitrary ones. So here I am, and I'm going to type blend. It's not a vector, it is a regular old float, and that's it. That's all I need to do. So now, when I do these renders, we can see there's actually a little secret toolbar up here on the top. If you open that, you'll also see this in the mplay window if you use those to look at your images later. There's this drop down here. It says C. That's the usual color one. But now there's this blend one also. And look at that. This is an image plane. Very cool. This image plane is simply storing the result of that variable that we came up with. And that's pretty much it. We can access this image plane later on. This is now, of course, different than the actual alpha. If I look at the actual alpha, it just looks how you expect. It's just a hard surface, so it has a kind of a hard edge to it. But the blend has no alpha itself, so we need to look at the color there. And there you go. We get this nice grade off, and we'll use that again later in compositing land. Awesome. So there's one other little thing we can do before we finish this chapter. And this one's real easy. You know how before, when we were talking about the ocean foam, the ocean foam exists on a plane because the thing that's being rendered was that ocean grid, which was, of course, a plane. The problem is, despite our best efforts, if we look at the surfaces that we made for our flip, it's largely flat, but it's not actually flat. If you get up real close to it, well, I'm going to press space 3 to look at it along the so-called front axis. You can actually see it raises up a good deal. That kind of accumulates over the course of the sim. So it does start flat, and as it goes, it kind of raises up a little bit. Can't be helped. It does look cool, though. Whee! The point is, if we want to still see that ocean foam in these areas of our flip sim, we need to bring the foam up to those areas. So all we need to do is say, I'm going to copy the surface here. I'm going to go over to our ocean foam. I'm going to merge in the surface, like so. I'm going to convert that. These are now polygons, and now we can use array to basically shoot our foam, if you recall this, up to that and see if it can intersect with it. So the ray can do project rays, and we'll say we just want it to go straight up and down. So delete this and just say go straight up. Wonder if you can hear that person singing outside. Let me know. So there you go. It moves it up. And now when this shading occurs, it will find those, because that's what's going to happen. The material is doing a little point cloud lookup on the surface that's being rendered, and it's finding the points that are nearby it. So that of course means we got another cache. So copy this, move it down here, file cache, ocean, foam, and we'll call this ocean foam splash. Come over to here. We're going to have to update that here. So ocean foam splash. This is going to be the fastest caching thing ever, but nonetheless, we do need to keep it in our dependency thing. And there it is. Now, our shaders only point to one of these paths. So when I look at the foam particles, I can't point it to both. So all I can do is say sometimes look at this one and sometimes look at this one. The way that we'll do that is with takes. Takes, as you may have seen in the past, are simply a kind of collection of overrides to use in certain circumstances. So I'm going to make a take called splash, and I'm going to say when we're in the splash take, which you can see is now up here, we will change the foam particles lookup. So include in take and say use this. So drag our file cache to here, absolute references, and you can see it's pointing at the splash one instead. And in our regular mode, it's looking at the regular one. And now we have to tell our actual mantra node here, the splash one only, to use the splash overrides. And that's pretty much it. So let us save this to disk. It'll be super fast. And then once this is done, we can kick off another render of our 720, and we should see those little bits of foam show up now. And there we go. Person is still singing outside. I really wish you could hear this. Okay, so there it is. Frame 70. Let's get back to 72. And this should work. And here it is finishing up. And sure enough, you can see now we have our bits of ocean foam back. So again, just another fun little gotcha. And there you go. That's how you get it back. I should also mention, you might want to put on this ray, we don't necessarily want it to shoot this foam all the way up to the top here. You can put a limit on it where you can say the max distance should be only like 0.5 maybe. We don't want it to shoot all the way up to the top here by accident somehow. I mean, it probably won't because it's all, like I said before, pretty much underneath this plane, but that's technically a little bit more safe. So you can recache that if you want. I guess I will. And I'll see you in the next chapter.